Welcome and good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here for the Leadership Dojo with us this morning. If we haven't met yet, I'm LeeAnn Mallorie. I'm one of the teachers here at the Strozzi Institute. And we are here this morning for a conversation about making grounded assessments, really on the backdrop of this moment in time. So I'm actually super curious. I'm going to say a few words to kick us off, but already if you would be willing to put something in the chat about why you decided to show up for this particular call or conversation today. Why grounded assessments at this moment in time for you? So what I wanted to share at the beginning really is just to say that I have been in a reflection, a conversation about assessments for quite a long time. And while in some ways this is really a moment where I think we at SI have been offering a lot of practices around resilience, a lot of practices around, how do you actually stay sane and centered during this moment in time? And assessments from a Strozzi Institute perspective can be a bit of a technical topic. Nonetheless, what I found is that at this moment, it's really part of the conversation about how do we move things forward? How do we perhaps support a pivot? How do we show up for what actually might need to change in the world? Often a grounded assessment or being able to express your opinion about what is at this moment, whether it be right or wrong, can start to galvanize something or can start to open a new possibility. I'm seeing some things a bit like that in the chat. Let's see what folks have to say. Some folks I registered because I'm here because I just registered and I wanted to be up in the morning, but other things around, okay, what assessments mean in a Strozzi Institute context, just here as part of my embodiment journey, experience around pivots and transitions, noticing my need to increase my awareness of being centered when doing assessments for sure. Let's see what else folks had to say. Good, okay. So similar kinds of reflections, wanting to stay open and lose the grip of judgment. Beautiful. Okay, and then we have some folks who are totally new to Strozzi and just checking it out this morning. So welcome to those of you for whom that is true. It's great to be with you this morning. So as we often do here at the Strozzi Institute, we're going to go ahead and start with a practice of centering, and then we'll dive more deeply into this conversation about assessments post our centering practice. So I want to invite you, some of you have probably done this many, many times with us, and for some this may be a new practice. I want to invite you first to just take a moment and bring your attention and your awareness more deeply down into your bodies. So that could be to take a deeper breath. Let yourself begin to feel. So if you've been chatting, go ahead and let that go for now. We'll come back to that. And allowing yourself to become 5–10% more present to what's so inside of you right now. You maybe have been up for a while, coming from different things, letting yourself catch up with yourself and become more present. Or maybe you just rolled out of bed if you're with me on the West Coast. It's like, oh yeah, I'm here in my body, out of dreamland. Great. And then often we will do this practice of centering standing up. We do this in part because it gives us more access to feeling in all parts of our body. Of course, the practice can be done either standing or sitting. So if you're up for standing this morning, I want to invite you to take a moment with me and go ahead and stand. If you prefer to do the practice sitting, that's fine too. I know for me, this has been a time where I'm sitting a lot at my desk, so any invitation to stand, I'm going to say yes to. All right, and even as you do that, letting yourself reorient in space, top of head, over shoulders, over your hips, over your own feet. Good, and then almost if you could imagine just letting your skin, letting your muscles relax a little bit more onto your bones, so that more and more, rather than holding the weight of you up, your skeleton is actually doing that work. The structure that's built for that is doing that work. If you're not sure how to do that, you could tense things just a bit and then let go. That can sometimes amplify. Oh, that's what that sensation would be like. Good. And then from here, once again, just tuning into sensations in your body. What do you notice? Could be temperature, pressure, something that feels like motion or stillness. Maybe a certain part of you lights up or feels a little blank. Could be an emotion. Good, so we center to become more present, more open, more connected. I would say also more available for what's before us. And as we're here for a conversation about centered and grounded assessments, giving, receiving them, you might just imagine that thing that you came for. It's like, oh, I'm practicing for the sake of that, so that I can train my nervous system that in that moment, the one I need to face or want to face more gracefully, I can access this kind of an imprint. Open, grounded, feeling myself. Good, and then here at SI, if you're new to this work, we center in 4 dimensions. These are 4 dimensions that really organize the human body by design. So versus how we may be in more of a fight or flight kind of a response, how we are when we're neutral, how we are when we're at rest, how the body works when uninterrupted. The first of those dimensions is length. So this is really the top of your head all the way down to the bottom of your feet. So you can take a moment and even more intentionally organize yourself in your own physical length. That might include noticing if you're reaching or overstretching to be a little taller than you are and settling in, or noticing if you tend to collapse and coming back fully into your length. We also talk about this as the line of your dignity. So letting yourself be as tall as you actually are, and just notice what that's like. And then as we do that, checking in with places that you might hold tension, or your body might by default work to hold yourself up, and see if you can relax 1 or 2 of those places a few percent more. So that could be unlocking your jaw, could be softening your knees, letting your shoulders rest, allowing your weight to pour more into your feet. And still breathing. And then we'll center in the 2nd dimension, which is width. This is the side to side of you. I often talk about this as the domain of connection, or like availability to others, to yourself. So here you might just try on for a moment, if you're pulling in or getting narrow, what's that like? And then let that out. So letting yourself almost like unfurl from the midline of your body out towards the sides in actual physical form, and kind of in metaphor or in the sense of your energy, like, oh, I'm taking up the space side to side. then notice how you do that. What do you have to shift, let go, open to, unlock, allow to become more present in with? Good, and then we'll center in the third dimension, which we say is depth. So like the front to the back of your body and everything in between, and also down inside. You're creating more of a sense of 360-degree presence. So as we often spend a lot of time focusing on what's in front of us, especially in the COVID days with our computer screens, we'll start by focusing on the back or paying attention to the back of your body. Let yourself feel your physical back, back of your head, shoulders, hips, and then becoming present to the space behind you as well. If you could imagine opening your back so that what's behind, what's past is still allowed, is still welcome. There's still space for that. Where you've come from. And then taking a moment, becoming more present to the insides. Parts of you that may get or have gotten buried, tucked away. Things you don't express. Allowing that to be part of your centering as well. And then as well, including the front. So again, front of your body, face, chest, fronts of your legs, and the space ahead of you. Good, and then from here, the fourth dimension we'll center in is what we call purpose. Often to do this, really reorganizing attention to the center or core of gravity of your body, which is this place just below your navel. If you want, you can put a hand here. So dropping your attention, dropping your awareness down into your gut. And then literally taking a moment to connect in your mind's eye with what you care about, what matters to you. Could be, if you've been in this work for a while, you have a declaration, statement of purpose that you're working with, or simply something about, oh, this is why I want to get better at embodied, grounded assessments. Maybe there's a who behind that, who I care about, or what we're up to together. And we say letting that shape you. So I care about that, and so I'm going to organize myself in this way so that I can be present to that, available for that. Don't think too hard about it. Just let your body show you. Good. And then from here, let's just take a moment, extending the hands down towards the earth. So you can bring them just a bit out from your side. And as you do this, go ahead and feel your fingertips and feel, sense, or imagine that as you extend your arms in this way, that there is something, aliveness, life, energy going out and down. I'm extending my life force. I'm extending my presence down towards the ground, the earth in this case. Notice what it's like to do that. How do you extend yourself? You might say here we could extend a quality or extend an intention. We could say, let's extend gratitude toward the earth. You could literally think about, oh, this is something that I'm grateful for. But you could also just feel, oh, this is what it's like to extend a quality of gratitude through my body, through my presence. Thank you. Yeah. Good, and then let's balance it out. Go ahead and raise your hands towards the sky. And here in this moment, let's try something different on. So from this place towards the sky, toward the heaven, whatever you associate with up there, extend a sense of wonder, maybe a sense of awe. How do you offer that through your presence? What's different about that quality? Good, and then go ahead and let your hands fall, and we'll do one more. Go ahead and extend the arms out. And here, let's call this towards people. Again, could be people you love or care about, people with whom this conversation of assessments is up right now, people in your workplace or people in your family. And then here, try on extending a quality of care through your arms, through your fingertips, through maybe your whole chest, front of your body. How do you extend a presence or a quality of care? What's different about that than gratitude or wonder? Okay, and go ahead and let that go, and just take a moment to move anything around in your body that you'd like. And then let's go ahead and come back together. So as we come back, we're also here in a practice of being present with, again, what is so in our bodies, in ourselves. If you would like to, go ahead and put in the chat your current mood after that practice. Beautiful, peace, settled, more awake, acceptance, relaxed, gratitude, compassionate, excited and content, hot and focused, calm and ready. Goes pretty fast. Thank you all. Extended, hopeful. Yeah, question in the chat, the fourth dimension we center in is purpose. So length, width, and depth, these three aspects of the body, and then purpose being what we would call an organizing principle, something that we allow to shape us and orient us maybe in a certain direction or in a certain way. Okay, thank you all. So we know that we're here for a conversation about grounded assessments, again, in the backdrop of this moment in time, a few weeks before an election, if you're in the US, in the middle of a global pandemic still, if you're anywhere in the world, in a moment of continued grappling with race and social justice in the US in particular, all of these things in the background. Many of you, if you work in organizations, that may look like business pivots or it may look like tough conversations with people that you have relationships with, that you care about in some way, and maybe it's not going well, or maybe it's a conversation about a new possibility. And really this topic of assessments is one of the things that I found to be one of the most powerful galvanizers or tools, let's say, practices, things that we can be doing as human beings that help to move things forward. So depending upon your role, that can look different ways, right? Some of you are probably like myself, coaches, trainers, assessments being what you might offer to someone that you're working with to help them see themselves more clearly, or to help them generate new possibilities, or even hold themselves accountable to the things they've already declared that they want. On the flip side, if you are in an organization, running an organization, working with a team, working on a team, this conversation about assessments can be much more about, well, how do we coordinate well together? What does it actually take to begin to move in such a way that is well organized, that we can get things done, for example? And the conversation about assessments is an opportunity to get even better at that. So I mentioned at the beginning of the call that I'm one of the trainers here at SI. Before doing this work, I started my career in a boutique consulting firm. And my major at the time, so when I began the work, I was kind of majoring in 360 feedback processes. I was tasked as a young person with helping the coaches and lead trainers to basically have a lot of interview-based conversations with folks inside of organizations about how a person was doing. And what I found in doing that, I would often begin a conversation with someone by saying, well, have you received feedback before? What's your relationship with 360, or what's your relationship with assessments, if we use this word? And they would often say, I don't like it, I'm not good at it, it's not helpful. And so I got really curious about that. And really what I found in being in those conversations was that it's not something that we have a lot of training in often, or maybe we have the tools, but something else goes awry. So right, there's the actual skill, and then there's the way that we're being in our bodies that can get in the way. And then, sort of same thing on the giving end. So folks will say, receiving assessments, I don't get enough of them. I find them difficult. They hurt. I don't like to get them. I haven't found them to be that helpful. Nobody is giving them to me. And on the other side, people saying, well, I have opinions about things. There's things I'd like to say. I'd like to hold my team more accountable. I'd like to help us get different results, but I'm not really sure how to express that. Or I say it, but it doesn't land, for example. So often there can be this kind of churn around assessments. And what I'll say is that in my early career, even while studying that very deeply, kind of learning the ropes of how to do that well linguistically, around that same time, I had my first direct report, meaning the first person that was assigned to work for me. And somewhat long story short, they quit after 9 months. And when they were asked why they weren't going to stick around, they said I was too tough on them, and they basically felt like they failed. So that gave me some information that, just being able to say an assessment doesn't necessarily solve the problem of being able to actually do it well, or to have somebody feel taken care of inside of it. So I'm seeing in the chat, I will say the chat moves very quickly, so I may not catch all of the questions, but I will do my best. And yes, happy to define assessment. That's definitely where I was going.
LeeAnn,
yes.
LeeAnn, can you just speak louder? We have a couple of people who have requested that you speak up.
Okay. I can sure try. I wonder if it makes sense to switch to a different microphone. So then is it like too soft tech, you think, or it's?
Two people have just asked that you just speak louder. Raise the volume just a little bit. Yeah, thanks.
Sure, I'm actually gonna switch mics. I think that may help. Does that seem better?
That's great, thanks.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so All right, y'all. So to define assessments, an assessment is a linguistic distinction. And these were initially really studied by and brought forward by Fernanda Flores, a Chilean linguist and politician. And the definition of assessment is an opinion or judgment made for the sake of coordinating action or to justify a feeling. So really an assessment is something that you do verbally, right? It's giving somebody or telling someone, speaking something that is your opinion about something, but on the backdrop of, or for the sake of, helping to move forward something that you care about together. So for example, that could be, we have a set of agreements or promises that we're in together, that we have with one another that we're living inside of. And there's a way that you are doing a really good job. And I want to express that to you. Or we're trying to coordinate together as a team, and there's a way that you're actually not meeting the standards, for example, that we've set. And I want to be able to express that to you. And really one of the ways that we talk about the distinction of assessment is in contrast to an assertion, which would be something that's a statement that's simply true or false. This is a glass of water. We would say that's an assertion. You can prove pretty easily that it's actually true. Whereas if I say, this is a beautiful glass of water, or this is a nourishing glass of water, there's something in there that's more, we would say, an assessment, that's more a judgment or an opinion, or something that isn't necessarily a fact. So why does that matter? For the sake of what? That matters because often in the context of coordination, or in the context of, let's say, leadership, in the context of even leading inside of our families, there is I'm just going to presence. I'm noticing that I'm both trying to take you on a journey and read the chat at the same time, and I'm finding that challenging right now. I'm going to let the folks who are on the chat helping go ahead and answer questions, or if there's something, we'll create a moment to ask. So working with assessments in a business context often can be, I need to give somebody a performance review, or I want to be able to speak to somebody who I'm working with about a way we need to pivot together. Assessments in a family context could be something more related to, how are we creating a space of love, or how are we creating a space of connection inside of our family right now? Or something more about a pivot we need to make as a collective in that context. So what I want to do is actually give you all a moment to, having just taken that much in, and I will take a moment to check the chat as we do this as well, is to grab a pen and paper, something that you have for yourself to write on or take notes, and answer this question. Where in your life right now do you need to make, speak, or offer an assessment to someone? And for the sake of what? So going from the abstract more to the specific here, where in your life do you need to make, speak, or offer an assessment to someone? And for the sake of what? And second question, what is the potential or already happening cost or consequence of not doing that? And I ask this in part because often, it can feel like there may be a cost to making an assessment. What if I say this and it breaks our relationship? What if I say this and, they don't get it? What if I say this and something goes awry in some way? Yeah. So it can be helpful to name for yourself, what's the cost of not doing it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm seeing a few folks put things in the chat. I'm going to give you one more question and then we'll take a moment to share. Next question is, what typically happens when you try? It could be like, what's challenging for you about doing that? Or what usually happens when you go for it? And I hear a little background noise. If someone is off mute and could be going back on mute, that would be great. Okay. And if what you've written so far is, here's what's already working about this, that's great. If you're already a pro at assessments, amazing. And if you haven't captured what might be more of a growth area or something that is challenging or something that doesn't always go well for you, or where you might want to keep looking, and there is something there, don't make something up if not, right? But if you haven't captured that and there is something like that for you, go ahead and capture that in your notes as well. And then I'd love to hear a couple of examples. I was actually hoping we could do some breakouts on this call. It looks like we don't have that capacity today. So instead, if there are one or two people who'd be willing to come off mute and just speak a little bit of what you've seen here. So where do you need to offer an assessment? What's the consequence of not doing that? Maybe we'll stick with that part for now. Are there one or two folks? So Lunas, can you help me a little bit? What's the best way to manage the...
Yes, if you can raise your hand and use the raise hand feature, and then I will take you off mute. So we have Kim in Seattle.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. Ken?
Can you hear me now?
I sure can.
I am so grateful to be here.
I'm so glad you're here.
Oh my, thank you so much. There's some things going on in the space of speaking truth to power, and needing to do that in love. And what I wrote was that the assessment has to be with me from imposter syndrome. And to focus on yourself for the sake of peace and longevity and truly loving and living God's purpose, and have respect and listen. And then the potential consequences, joy and spiritual growth in the family and grace. And the past consequence is of the way I was doing it in the past was sin and death for 7 generations. And what usually happens if I get off the beam is there's distraction and fear, and I'm less used to people. And it causes discord and misunderstanding. And what I'm seeing is that seems to be what's going on around with situations where we're in fear. Mm-hmm. We may love each other and be in fear, and everybody wants the same thing, and we're in fear. So I just wrote, what's left is to remember your job. You get joy from it. And so.
Thanks, Kim. Can I just check something out? It sounds like that was really oriented around an assessment you need to make of yourself so that you show up in this different way. Is that right?
Well, because when you said the thing about sticking out your hand, right? It can't give away what isn't there, what isn't embodied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. So. Thanks for sharing. Mm-hmm. Thank you. So really that's right. We can, to Kim's point, we can make assessments and do make assessments of each other. And also we make assessments or can make assessments with ourselves. Who else would like to offer an example? Who do you need to offer an assessment to right now for the sake of what?
We have Gabrielle Hildebrand. If you want to come up mute. I'm going to lower your hand.
I need to before the pandemic, I was an employer, and I want to free my people. Some of them, I'm not sure, want to be no longer employees. I want them to still work with me, but in a collaborative way. And I just don't get around to speaking up. That's sort of my typical thing is it goes fine when I do it, but I don't get there. Mm-hmm. So, it's some kind of avoidance. I get busy, take another class or whatever, but.
Yeah. So it sounds like you need to make an assessment that involves other people that's related to them transitioning their work. I'm curious, Gabrielle, is the assessment more like an assessment about them and their performance, or is it actually more an assessment you need to speak that's about what's happening in the organization, that therefore you need to transition things?
It's more about me, like what's happening in the organization and what I want. It's more about what I want. And they're great. I mean, it's not anything negative about them.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, sometimes I'll just say, we're going to give a little more distinction here to work with, but sometimes even just figuring out what is the assessment is actually we might say half the battle, right? Is actually part of the conversation. So it doesn't sound like this is a case where you need to let people go and there's an assessment you need to give them about them not performing, but rather there's an assessment about the state of the organization or what's not sustainable here, or what we've built that actually isn't what's needed going forward. And that's the piece that is the assessment that needs to be spoken to be able to move the conversation forward. Thank you.
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, folks. So I want to offer a little bit more, I want to be able to offer a little bit more sort of meat on the bones in terms of how we do this in the Strozzi Institute context, the way we think about it, the way we practice it. So let's go ahead and transition to that now. Once again, the practice of making a grounded assessment, and a useful, let's say, grounded assessment, or as useful as possible, has a few different components. And really the first piece of this practice is to be aware, as you're moving forward with offering an assessment, of the person or the situation's commitments or cares. So we always say there's a for sake of what we would do something. And it's important to be able to match up, if you will, the assessment with that. In other words, often, maybe in a business context in particular, or even in our home lives, for example, we might just say, something that is, hey, you're doing this, I don't like it, or hey, you're doing this, it's not working. And, that may or may not land for someone, but being able to know the backdrop of the assessment is super important. In the Jersey context, we have another practice where for those of you who are new, we'll set a declaration. So this is what I care about. This is what I'm moving towards. This is how I want to grow. And then I'm in embodied practices that are moving me in that direction. If you know what someone cares about or how they want to grow or what matters to them, the assessment would be lined up with that. So this assessment will move you forward in that direction. I'll give you an example. So I'm working with a client right now. She's a young female leader inside of an organization. And the organization is, kind of just to give a bit of a high level. So it's a company that is at the intersection of insurance and climate. And she has been tasked with reviving what looks at the moment like a dying part of the business. So it's a context where something needs to change. And what she's been finding is that she'll be in meetings and she starts to get frustrated. She starts to kind of check out. She's maybe offering, suggestions like, oh, we need to do this. We should do that. We might call that coaching. More, here's a solution, for example, and no one's hearing her. And this is going on. And what's starting to happen for her somatically is that she's feeling drained. Like the energy is kind of running out of her body. She's finding that her body language is getting more slouched, and she's starting to kind of back off of this conversation, even though she knows that there's something important to do here. Now we started talking about, well, what's happening in that moment? What we realized is that while she's giving suggestions about what needs to be done, she's actually not landing, we would say, the assessment, or she's not really spoken the opinion about what's happening that gives the backdrop that could then open the possibility for new ideas or solutions to come forward. So I asked her, well, what's the real thing that you see or that you think you need to say here? And what happened in that moment was that she sat straight up, she looked forward, she really filled herself out in a different way. And she said, well, the business model isn't working. Now, that isn't necessarily a fact, right? That's her opinion about something. But what happened in that moment was that she was able to really crystallize the assessment, the opinion she had about what's happening, that needed to get spoken to be able to open the possibility of more conversations in the organization, because nobody had actually considered or really been willing to speak that out loud. Essentially, the way the business is built, it's a business that's built on a couple of assumptions. One, that disaster will not happen. And, in particular, we see in California with the fires and various parts of the world right now, like there's a lot of things going on with climate that are not getting better at the moment. And then also that they have more conscious investors who want to create business models that are more win-wins. And the capacity to speak and then to consider this opinion that the business model isn't working would be a new decision inside the organization. So what happened for my client is that after she spoke that, she felt more relief. And she realized that it didn't matter whether she was right or wrong about that, true or false, but that it really was the opinion, the thing that needed to get expressed to open a new kind of conversation inside the organization. So I want to give you a few more distinctions here, and I'll kind of come back to the example as a way of putting color on them. So as I said, of course, an assessment is not true or false, right? It's not a fact. It's not necessarily, we don't know if it's true that the business model isn't working. It's her opinion about what is so. But it's more the judgment, the opinion, the sense that she's making, or the way that she's evaluating what's happening in the moment. And then in this particular case, an assessment has power, let's say, when the person speaking it has the capacity to make that judgment, or when maybe we would grant them the authority to make that judgment. So if we take my client in this particular case, she has 20 years of working in this environment. And she's pretty much a whiz at understanding how business models work. So she's got a lot of depth, and we could say we could give her some authority to have an opinion about that. Now, when you're giving an assessment, there are a few different pieces of what also you might bring in that can help. So strictly, the assessment itself is that opinion piece. I don't think the business model is working. My assessment is the business model isn't working. However, you may also, to be able to move this forward, want to offer a couple of other pieces. And many of us will weave these things together or not necessarily tease them out in a way that makes things fully clear. So what she was doing before she was able to nail, okay, this is what the assessment is, was that she was kind of giving coaching or giving solutions. Hey, I think we should do X. I think we should do Y. I think we should do X. I think we should do Y. That can be part of it, but without the assessment, someone can go, well, why would I want to do that? I'm not even in with you that something needs to change right now. Why would I take that action, for example, right? So I have found that in the practice of assessments, these 4 pieces, teasing them out, knowing what each of them are, and then being able to bring them forward more clearly can help. So the first one is the assessment. My assessment is that the business model isn't working. The second one is what we call here at the Strozzi Institute grounding. This is the why. Here's what I see that has me say that. Well, I'm noticing that 50% of our investors are pushing back on me because they're not happy with the fact that where their money goes, they only make money if somebody else loses, right? What I'm seeing, the grounding that I would offer is that there were 3 more fires in California this year than last year, and that is that if you look at the trend over the past couple of years, you can see the same thing, that it's actually getting worse. If you look at the data, for example. Another piece of the puzzle that can be really helpful to offer when making an assessment, but that isn't the assessment itself, right, is the impact. The impact that this is having on my business, if we take my client, for example, the impact that this is having on the business is that the fund we're trying to build is going down, and that we're losing investors left and right? There's kind of a cost or a consequence in there. And then here's the next step I think we should take. I want to suggest that we table this conversation in the meeting, and instead we actually spend some time beginning to redesign or reimagine what a new business model could look like. Now, all of those pieces are technical, they're linguistic. And again, what I've seen is that when you can get clear about what is the assessment and actually speak those various pieces, but not miss one, you can have a lot of impact and kind of help move something forward. And who we're being, right, from an embodied perspective is also a huge part of the puzzle. So my client, as I mentioned, her experience of trying to be in this conversation was very much a collapse at the beginning, right? She was noticing that she would kind of say something or offer something, and then as it would go on, her whole system was starting to shut down. She was falling into what was more of a practiced or habitual pattern for her in the context of trying to express herself. So there's also a piece around centering, being able to be in your body, be present, be open, be connected as you're having this conversation. Let me go ahead and pause. Good. Actually, what I'd like to do is take a moment. If you want to go back to your notes that you have, and if you look at that same conversation, I want to give you a moment to consider what part here is the assessment, or what is the assessment? Again, if you get right down to the heart of the matter in this conversation that you need or want to have, is there a core opinion, judgment that's so for you that you believe, if spoken, could help move something forward? perhaps could help you coordinate better, could help open a new conversation, a new possibility. And what would that be? Good, and then as well, go ahead and take a moment with the conversation that you teed up to consider, do you have grounding? Is there something you're witnessing, observing, that is more of a fact? That is the reason for which you have that opinion? My assessment, I'll give an example. My assessment is that you're not that into our relationship anymore. My grounding is that each night when you come home, rather than greet me at the door and give me a hug like you used to, you just go to your room and shut the door. The impact that's having on me, so if you want to take the next step with the conversation you're looking at, the impact that's having on me is, and that happens, I'm feeling sad. I'm starting to wonder if you really care if this is working. Again, grounding is, these are more assertions, these are facts, these are things that you can see, that are observable. Good, and then the last piece here, optional, could be coaching, a suggestion, a request, a proposal of a different way to engage together. Would you be willing to check in with me when you come home? So as you're working on this, I'm checking out the chat, and I want to presence that there are a whole bunch of questions. This is a massive topic. We probably could do a long course on this versus an hour in the Leadership Dojo. Just really appreciating some of the different pieces here. I want to try to speak to a few. We have one question about, ungrounded assessments and dealing with maybe harmful judgments or things that are coming at us. When we teach the assessment work at the Strozzi Institute, we specifically work with what we call an assessment litany. Really, it's a statement, and it is a statement of what's so about an assessment that's intended as a way to embody or to hold a line or a barrier that you really get to choose to what extent you take something in that's an assessment. It goes like this. It's kind of, it sounds a little cheesy, but essentially we practice embodying this statement. I acknowledge that you have an assessment. It's neither true nor false. It may be grounded or ungrounded. I have or have not given you the authority or permission to make that assessment. So the practice here is to go, I'm centering inside of myself, and I'm reminding myself in my own soma that I also get to be at choice on the receiving end of this coming to me. Yeah, I'm also looking through the chat. Okay, so what we haven't done a lot of here is really the actual practice of offering the assessment and seeing what gets kicked up. As I mentioned, I was hoping we might be able to do breakouts. We're not able to do that today, but what I want to offer is if there's someone in your life who's not the person that you need to give the assessment to, with whom you could, in the next 24 hours, practice speaking the assessment that you were just working on as a way of taking a next step, I would highly recommend that. And in that practice, I want to make a couple of suggestions. So one, the way we started our practice today, those of you who come to Strozy Institute are familiar with a basic centering practice. So this is probably old hat to you, but for those who are new, what we did, right, to get present with the sensations in the body, to allow ourselves to center in the four domains of length, of width, of depth, and of purpose, right? Connecting with our own purpose and our own grounding in our own bodies, and then practicing to speak. What starts to happen is that you'll start to see this is where I tend to go. This is what my default's going to be. This is maybe how I will roll in moving into an assessment. And that can show up different ways. So that can show up as, wow, as I start to speak it, I get quiet and I start to collapse. There's a somatic edge. There's a practice for me to be in there and tracking and working with that and coming back to center. Or it could be, wow, even though I wrote down, here's the assessment, here's the grounding, I open my mouth and I start to speak it and I go right to the grounding and I skip the assessment. Okay, here's the edge, here's the thing that I might need to practice or the place that I need to work. So in role playing or in being an actual, with another human being and playing that out, you'll get a chance to start to get to know more, what is the road towards something even more impactful or more effective for me here. So that is my homework for you all as part of this Leadership Dojo. I hope that is helpful. So Linus, I'm aware of our time. I know that you have some things you would like to share with this group about upcoming courses and what's next, and opportunities to learn more about assessments, because clearly we can't complete everything about them in an hour-long call. Would you like to come off mute and let us know?
Thanks so much, LeeAnn.
Yeah.
And thanks, Dara, for putting the questions in the chat and for helping us along. We do have 2 courses that are open. If you're wanting to learn more about assessments, our Embodied Leadership Core has just opened for enrollment. That class begins on November 10th, and it is led by our one of our senior teachers, Nathan Shara. So anyone who wants to go further into commitments, conditioned tendencies, assessments, and learning these practices, I would highly suggest that you join that course. We also still have open and space for those who are interested in somatics, trauma, and resilience, which is led by our Director of Methodology, Stacey K. Haynes. And that in that course, you will be working through trauma, shame, resilience, and also, I would say, systemic oppression as some of the work there. Inside the chat, I will put a link to those courses and to my email if you have questions. So please don't be shy. Click on the link, send me an email if you have questions. I'm happy to guide you along to your next embodiment course. Thanks. And since we're at time, I just want to thank everyone for being here and LeeAnn for leading this Leadership Dojo. We're really appreciative of you guiding us through such a heavy topic. And I look forward to seeing you all on the fourth Tuesday of the month. So look for our emails and have a great day.